The arena lights dimmed, and a low rumble spread through the crowd like distant thunder rolling across a restless sky. This was no ordinary night. This was a proving ground. The WBA Asia Cruiserweight title hung in the balance, but more than that, something deeper was at stake. Identity, pride, and the raw hunger of two undefeated fighters stepping into the unknown. From Nairobi, Kenya, came Joshua Wasike, a man whose record was as clean as it was mysterious. 5 fights, 5 wins, 4 knockouts. A dangerous statistic, but one wrapped in uncertainty. He had fought, he had finished, but he had never been truly tested under these lights, on this stage. And now the silence before the storm was closing in. Across the ring stood a different kind of force. Timur Bibilov, just 19 years old, already carrying the aura of something special. 7 fights, 7 knockouts, a perfect storm of youth, power, and ambition. But perfection in boxing is fragile, and tonight it would be stretched to its limits. The bell had not yet rung, but already the tension was suffocating. This was the moment where records meant nothing, and reality would take over. 2 unbeaten fighters, 1 path forward, and no escape once the bell sounded. When Joshua Wasike made his walk to the ring, the applause carried a mix of curiosity and quiet anticipation. He wasn't the favorite, but he carried something just as dangerous: belief. There was a calmness in his steps, the kind that only comes from a man who has never tasted defeat. Yet behind that calm was a question no one could answer. How would he react when pushed beyond his limits? His past fights had ended quickly, violently, decisively. But tonight would not be so simple. Across the canvas, Timur Bibilov entered like a rising storm, young and fearless, carrying the weight of expectation on his shoulders. At just 19, he was already being positioned as the future, a fighter with explosive power and a reputation for ending nights early. But this was new territory, a 10-round fight, a championship on the line, and an opponent who, despite limited experience, carried knockout power of his own. The introductions echoed through the arena, the final words before violence replaced ceremony. Both men stood tall, eyes locked, absorbing the magnitude of the moment. Somewhere in the crowd, anticipation turned into electricity. Because everyone knew, this wasn't going to be a cautious chess match. This was going to be a war. The opening bell rang and immediately the tension snapped into motion. The early rounds were not about chaos. They were about control. Bibilov stepped forward with a measured aggression, his presence alone forcing Wasike onto the back foot. There was something calculated in his approach, something patient. He wasn't rushing. He was studying, testing, probing. And then the first real statement, a sharp left hook on the inside that echoed through the arena. You could hear it, you could feel it. Wasike felt it too, but he didn't crumble. Instead, he absorbed it, adjusted, and tried to respond. That was the first glimpse of his character. But there was a problem. He kept finding himself trapped, backed into the corner, pressured, suffocated. Bibilov's movement was subtle but effective, cutting off the ring, forcing Wasike into dangerous territory. Every time he touched the ropes, the danger multiplied. And Bibilov capitalized. Body shots, short hooks, sneaky uppercuts slipping through the guard. The Kenyan fighter was being tested in ways he never had before. And yet he remained standing. The first round closed with a clear message. Bibilov was in control, but Wasike was not going anywhere. As the fight moved into the middle rounds, the tempo began to rise, and the violence intensified. Bibilov started to open up, letting his hands go with more confidence, more authority. His right hand became a weapon, crashing through Wasike's guard, snapping his head back. And yet, in the middle of that storm, Wasike showed something unexpected: resistance. Not just survival, but defiance. He fired back. A clean right hand of his own landed flush, reminding Bibilov that this was not a one-sided affair. It was a warning shot, a moment that said, "I'm still here." But the momentum remained with the Russian. Round 3 brought the first turning point. A perfectly timed combination, right hand followed by a sharp left, and suddenly Wasike's legs betrayed him. He hit the canvas. The crowd erupted. It was the kind of moment that usually signals the beginning of the end. But Wasike rose, steady, composed, defiant. That refusal to stay down changed the energy of the fight. He wasn't just surviving, he was enduring. And in boxing, endurance can be just as dangerous as power. Round 4 and 5 became a brutal test of will. Bibilov, sensing the finish, pressed forward with calculated aggression. But he didn't lose discipline. He didn't rush recklessly into danger. Instead, he broke Wasike down piece by piece. The left hook became a recurring nightmare, landing over and over again with devastating precision. Each shot chipped away at Wasike's resistance, each exchange pulling him deeper into exhaustion. And yet he refused to fold. Even as the punishment mounted, he kept throwing back. That was what made this fight so compelling. It wasn't just about dominance. It was about resilience. Wasike's corner urged him on, reaching for emotion, for motivation, for anything that could keep him in the fight. And for moments, it worked. He found small pockets of success, landed shots that reminded everyone of his power. But the difference was clear. Bibilov was sharper, faster, more composed. The rounds were slipping away, and with them, Wasike's chances of victory. By the 6th and 7th rounds, the fight had evolved into something deeper than competition. It became a test of spirit. Wasike was behind on the scorecards. He had been knocked down. He had absorbed heavy punishment. But still, he refused to retreat into survival mode. Instead, he chose to fight. That decision made the rounds dangerous, unpredictable. Because a wounded fighter with nothing to lose is one of the most dangerous things in boxing. And for a brief moment, it showed. Wasike pushed forward, throwing combinations, forcing Bibilov to stand his ground. It was his best stretch of the fight. The crowd felt it, the energy shifted. But Bibilov responded like a champion in the making. He didn't fade. He adjusted, tightened his guard, picked his shots, and slowly he regained control. That's what separated him. Not just power, but composure under pressure. As the fight entered the championship rounds, fatigue began to reveal itself. Both fighters were breathing heavier. The pace had taken its toll, but the difference was still evident. Bibilov had the edge, in power, in control, in damage inflicted. Yet Wasike continued to defy expectations. Round 9 became his moment, his stand. He surged forward with renewed energy, throwing combinations with urgency, as if he knew this was his last chance to leave a mark. And for the first time, Bibilov was forced backward. It was a stunning shift. The underdog was not just surviving, he was fighting back. The crowd roared, sensing the drama. But boxing is unforgiving. Moments like that demand perfection. And Wasike, despite his courage, could not sustain it. The storm returned, and Bibilov weathered it. Then came the final round, the closing chapter of a brutal story. There was no feeling out, no hesitation, just action. And then the decisive moment. A crushing left hook landed clean, followed by another. Wasike went down, again, the third knockdown of the fight. He rose, but the damage was undeniable. Bibilov closed in, sensing the finish. Another combination, another heavy shot, and finally, the referee stepped in. It was over. A TKO victory for Timur Bibilov. The crowd erupted, but there was also respect, deep respect for Joshua Wasike, a fighter who refused to quit, who turned a one-sided fight into a war of endurance and heart. For Bibilov, this was more than a win. It was a lesson, a step forward, a glimpse into the battles that lie ahead. And for everyone watching, it was a reminder. Boxing is not just about who wins, it's about who refuses to fall.